My name is Alice Eve. I'm 42 years old. Every fine line I see in the mirror bears the scars of sleepless nights, bills paid alone, and the struggle to be both a mother and a father to my teenage daughter. I lost my husband 5 years ago to a sudden heart attack. Since that day, life hasn't just been about living for me. It's been a fight for survival. Standing tall as a widow and a mother within the grinding gears of corporate America requires grit. You don't have the luxury of showing weakness. You certainly don't have the luxury of making mistakes. For years, I've worked as a senior supply chain analyst at Virex Global Logistics, a giant in the industry. I know the anatomy of this company inside out. No one in the office knows better than I do which supplier is bluffing, which shipment will get stuck at which customs checkpoint, or exactly which button to push in a crisis. I sit at my desk at 8 a.m. and lose myself in Excel spreadsheets, contracts, and shipment plans until the dead of night. The work I do either saves or costs the company millions of dollars. I have always been on the winning side. 2 months ago, management said we needed fresh blood. My workload was already unbearable, so I was actually relieved to hear I'd be getting help. Finally, I told myself, I'll be able to breathe a little. And then came Ruby. Ruby was in her late 20s, likely fresh out of college or with maybe a year or two of superficial experience, an energetic but empty vessel. With her flashy outfits, the brand name coffee glued to her hand, and the fancy but meaningless corporate jargon she threw around in meetings, she managed to dazzle management. Her title was identical to mine. Supply chain analyst. Her desk was right across from mine. I was patient with her in the first few weeks. She needed to learn the ropes, and by nature I'm a helpful person. It feels good to help, you know? But as time went on, I realized something was wrong. Something wasn't normal. I knew it, I felt it. Ruby wasn't trying to learn the job. She was just trying to look like she was doing it. I was correcting her reports. I was cleaning up her messy calls with suppliers. In meetings, she presented the data I prepared and collected the applause. She's new, Alice, she'll adjust, I kept telling myself. But the knot of unease in my stomach was growing. The day it all exploded was an ordinary Tuesday. The office's communal printer had jammed again. Ruby had hurriedly printed something before rushing out to lunch, but left without it because of the paper jam. When I went to the printer, I opened the cover to clear it. I carefully pulled out the crumpled page and smoothed it out. When my eyes locked onto the numbers on the page, a cold lump formed in my stomach. It was a payroll statement, an attachment to Ruby's offer letter and her first month's pay stub. I rubbed my eyes. I had to be seeing things. The annual gross salary written there was exactly 3 times mine. 3 times. Can you believe it? 3. I had given 12 years to this company. When my husband died, I was back at my desk 3 days after the funeral. I worked overtime to pay my daughter's tuition. During annual reviews, when they told me, "Things are tight this year, Alice, manage with 2%, I didn't make a sound. At least I have a job, I told myself gratefully. But standing before me was someone doing the exact same job, or rather failing to do it, someone inexperienced who was learning from me, yet she would earn in 1 year what it took me 3 years to earn. In that moment, the hum of the office faded away. All I could hear was the rushing of blood in my ears. This wasn't just unfair. It was an insult, to me, to my labor, to my daughter, and to my years of service. I wanted to crumple the paper and throw it, but I didn't. I folded it calmly, put it in my pocket, and returned to my desk. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from pure rage. I acted as if nothing had happened for the rest of the day. When Ruby returned from lunch, I smiled at her. I didn't even ask. "Did you get your paper from the printer, sweetie?" The war had begun, and I wasn't going to strike until my strategy was set. That evening I went home and hugged my daughter. Looking at her innocent face, I swore an oath. I would not let them steal what was rightfully mine. The next day I used my PTO, paid time off, and took the day off. I went to see Mr. Henderson, known as one of the sharpest employment lawyers in the city. When Mr. Henderson reviewed the evidence I had, Ruby's job description, mine, my performance reviews, and that salary info, A strange, sly smile appeared on his face. "Ms. Eve," he said, peering over his glasses. "In the United States, the Equal Pay Act and discrimination laws are very clear. They cannot create such a massive wage gap between two people doing the same job with the same responsibilities, especially when you are significantly more senior. Gender, age, or any other reason. This is an open and shut case." "I just want what I'm owed," I said. "Nothing more." "We'll get more, don't you worry," Henderson said. The legal process began quietly and deeply, just as I wanted. I will never forget how the air in the office turned to ice when the first legal notice hit management. When our general manager, Mark, called me into his office, his face was beet red. "Alice, what do you think you're doing?" he boomed. "You're bringing lawyers into an internal company matter? We are a family." "Families don't exploit each other, Mark," I said coolly. My voice didn't tremble. The old, submissive Alice was gone. "Ruby and I do the same job. I am the memory of this company. She is learning the job from me. Yet her salary is 3 times mine. This isn't fair, and it isn't legal. Market conditions." He started to stammer. "Her education is different. Her education is kindergarten level next to my 12 years of experience." I cut him off. "Talk to my lawyer." As expected, the lawsuit didn't drag on. When the company's lawyer saw my flawless performance reviews, 10 years of exceeds expectations, and realized Ruby was still on probation, they understood that going to court would be a PR disaster and result in a much larger payout. They offered a settlement. My terms were clear. My salary would be raised to Ruby's level, meaning tripled. I would receive back pay for lost wages. My position would be protected. They accepted desperately. When the signatures were dried and I saw that lump sum hit my bank account along with my new pay stub, the sense of victory was priceless. I could finally give my daughter the life she wanted. My mortgage and car payments would no longer drown me. But I didn't know then that the real war was just beginning. They had paid the money, but their egos were bruised. Mark and the management team had already marked me as a troublemaker, a traitor to the company. The first day back at the office, I realized they wouldn't let me enjoy my victory. Managers who used to say, "Good morning, Alice," now wouldn't even look at my face. I was invited to meetings at the last minute or simply forgotten. And the worst part was Ruby. She knew what happened. She knew my salary had been equalized with hers, but she also realized management had pushed the button to get rid of me. One day she came to my desk, holding a complex shipment file. "Alice," she said with a fake smile. "Mark wants me to lead this North American distribution project. But I don't know the details. Can you teach me these Excel macros and the special clauses in the supplier contracts? I need to learn quickly." I looked up at her. I caught that look in her eyes, the "you have to do this" look. Management had started their retaliation tactics, trying to force a constructive discharge. They were isolating me, increasing my workload but restricting my authority. And now, they expected me to train the girl they were grooming to replace me. They were going to squeeze every drop out of me and then kick my husk to the curb. I leaned back in my chair. In that moment, that very second, I decided. Yes, I got my money, but I had lost my peace. And I hadn't yet taught them the lesson they truly deserved. "Ruby," I said calmly, "my job description doesn't say corporate trainer or consultant. You're sitting in that chair claiming you deserve that salary. So prove you deserve it. Figure it out yourself." Ruby's face fell. "But Mark said." "Send my regards to Mark," I said and turned back to my screen. War had been declared. They planned to wear me down until I resigned. I was planning a much bigger game. They thought I was just an employee, but they forgot one thing. I was the key to the system. And when they lose the key, they won't be able to get back in without breaking down the door. I didn't want to leave, no. But staying would have a price. I was going to teach them that experience is something too valuable to be bought with money. And they were going to learn it the hard way. The bitter, unpleasant, and inefficient way. In the weeks following my court victory, the Virex Global Logistics office turned into a battlefield, But this wasn't a war fought with guns and artillery. It was a psychological war waged with passive-aggressive sticky notes, accidentally omitted emails, and a constant, suffocating sense of surveillance. Management had been forced by legal mandate to raise my salary, but they made sure I felt unwanted in every single cell of my body. Mark's plan was simple. He would squeeze me so hard, make me so miserable, that I would eventually throw my hands up and say, "I quit." That way, they'd be rid of me without paying a dime in severance. Walking to my desk in the mornings felt like entering a crime scene. Reports that used to be approved in 10 minutes were now bounced back 3 times for ridiculous reasons like formatting non-compliance. If I took 5 extra minutes at lunch, an automated-looking email from HR titled, "Regarding adherence to working hours," would land in my inbox. Me, the woman who hadn't been late once in 12 years, was being treated like an irresponsible intern. And of course there was Ruby. Ruby, the golden child management was grooming to replace me. She was aware of what was happening but tried to navigate the situation by hiding behind her feigned innocence, or perhaps her cunning. One day she came up to me, branded coffee in hand. "Alice," she said, her voice trembling with fake concern. "Mark appointed me as the head of the Asia-Pacific Logistics Network. But I just can't get the customs codes to match in the ERP system. The screen keeps giving me errors. Can you give me your password and show me how you do it on your screen? My authorization hasn't been defined yet." I took off my glasses and looked at her for a long moment. She wasn't just asking for information. She was asking me to tie my own noose. If I taught her those codes and the system's backdoors, my expiration date at this company would officially arrive. "Ruby," I said, my voice ice cold. "Sharing credentials is a direct violation of company security policy. You should know that. Besides, I have to finish the 2024 cost analysis that Mark wanted yesterday. Maybe you should open a ticket with IT." "But IT is so slow to respond," Mark said. "It was urgent." "Fine. Then tell Mark to speed up IT," I said, turning back to my screen. I heard her whisper "bitch" under her breath as she walked away, but I pretended not to hear. When Mark summoned me to his office, I wasn't surprised. "Alice," he said, aggressively spinning a pen in his hand. "You aren't being a team player. I'm getting complaints that you're refusing to assist Ruby. You need to transfer your knowledge." "Mark," I replied steady. "When you equalized my salary with Ruby's, you told me she was senior status and that she earned that paycheck. If she's making what I'm making, that implies she knows what I know. Why should I tutor her? I'm simply doing my own job." His face turned purple. He had no answer because they were tangled in their own web of lies. "This attitude is going to reflect on your performance review," he threatened. That was the breaking point. I couldn't stay here anymore. Not just for my pride but for my sanity. I had to leave. But I couldn't leave empty-handed. I had to leave them in such a state that my absence wouldn't create a gap. It would create a black hole. That evening at home, I dug through an old box of business cards. I found the card for David, the regional director at Nexus Global, our biggest competitor in the sector. Nexus had been trying to steal market share from Virex for years, but they weren't as fast as our supply network, the one I built. I met David for lunch. He was surprised to see me. My loyalty to Virex was legendary in the industry. "Alice Eve," he said, smiling. "Which way is the wind blowing you?" I didn't beat around the bush. "Let's call it a storm, not a wind, David. I'm thinking of leaving Virex. And I can bring not just my jacket, but 12 years of supply chain optimization experience, supplier relationships, and crisis management strategies." David's eyes lit up. Poaching someone who knew the inner workings of Virex, especially a key player like me, was a jackpot for them. "Why now?" he asked. "Staying where my value isn't recognized is a betrayal to myself," I said. I didn't go into details. I didn't play the victim. I kept it professional. 2 days later the offer came. Nexus offered a base salary 20% higher than my current court-adjusted pay, the title of Director of Supply Chain Operations, and a signing bonus. Accepted. The night I drafted my resignation letter, I felt a strange sense of peace. The next morning when I walked into Mark's office, Ruby was there too, trying to explain something. "Sorry to interrupt," I said, without a shred of sorrow in my voice. "But this can't wait." I dropped the envelope on Mark's desk. Mark opened the envelope, read the paper, and couldn't hide the sly smile spreading across his face. They had done it. They had worn me down, forced me to resign. They wouldn't have to pay severance. The victory was theirs. Or so they thought. "We were expecting this, Alice," Mark said, pushing the paper aside. "Maybe this is for the best. You just weren't fitting into our company culture anymore." He turned to Ruby. "See, Ruby. The floor is yours now. Alice is leaving." Ruby looked at me with the air of a victorious commander. "I'm sorry, Alice. But don't worry, I'll take over things. I've got this covered." I wanted to laugh out loud. She had it covered. I was going to sit back and watch. Because Ruby didn't know what she was taking over. They didn't know that the Excel macros I used were password protected, that the special discounts and supplier contracts were based on my personal relationships, or that the secret numbers to call during a customs crisis were only stored in my memory. I wasn't going to teach them a thing. I would leave my files organized, of course, so as not to be legally liable, but I would never explain how to use those files. "I don't want to work the notice period," I said. "Deduct it from my accrued PTO. Today is my last day." Mark was so happy he didn't object. The sooner he got me out of the office, the sooner he could transition to the new order with Ruby. "Agreed," he said. "Pack your things and hand your badge to security." As I packed up my desk, a few old friends in the office looked on with sad eyes. I just smiled at them. "Everything is going to be fine," I said. When I took my box and stepped into the elevator, I looked back one last time at that glass building. "Goodbye, Virex," I whispered. "A storm is coming and you have no umbrella." When I got home, I hugged my daughter. "Mom, did you quit your job?" she asked anxiously. "Yes, honey," I said. "But I'm starting a better one. And my old bosses. They're going to miss me very soon." I turned off my phone. I was going to spend the weekend preparing for my new position at Nexus Global. On Monday, in the office of Virex's biggest rival, I would start planning how to melt down their revenue. And when Monday morning hits at Virex, that's when the real fun begins. Monday morning at Nexus Global felt like breathing pure oxygen. My new office had a view of the city skyline, not a brick wall. My computer was brand new, and there was a welcome basket on my desk with a handwritten note from David. "Glad to have you on the winning team." I was sipping my coffee, reviewing Nexus's Asia supply routes, when my personal phone buzzed. It was 9:15 a.m. Caller ID, Virex Logistics, landline. I let it ring. I took a slow sip of my coffee and watched the screen go dark. 2 minutes later it rang again. Then a text message popped up from Ruby. "Alice, please pick up. Emergency. Can't find the customs waivers for the Detroit shipment." Smiled. The Detroit shipment was a massive delivery of automotive parts for Virex's biggest client. It was time-sensitive. If those parts didn't clear customs by noon, the assembly line would stop, and Virex would be hit with massive penalties under the Service Level Agreement, SLA. I knew exactly where those waivers were. They weren't in the system. They were in a physical folder I kept locked in the archives because the digital portal often crashed. I had mentioned this in meetings for years, but no one listened. I also knew that the customs officer, Officer Miller, only approved expedited clearance if you called him personally, a relationship I had built over a decade of sending him Christmas cards. I didn't answer. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb and went into my onboarding meeting. By lunchtime, my phone was blown up. 14 missed calls. 3 voicemails from Mark. I went to a quiet corner of the Nexus cafeteria and listened to Mark's last voicemail. His voice, usually so arrogant, sounded strangled. "Alice, look. We have a situation. The Detroit shipment is stuck at the border. Ruby is struggling to locate the clearance codes. We are risking a factory shutdown. Just call me back and tell us where the files are. I didn't call back. I finished my salad. At 2 p.m. my phone rang again. This time it was Mark's personal cell. I decided it was time to answer. Hello, this is Alice. Alice! Thank God, Mark shouted. I could hear the chaos in the background. Phones ringing, people yelling. Listen, stop playing games. Where are the HS codes and the waiver forms for the Detroit project? Customs is threatening to seize the cargo. Mark, I said, my voice calm and professional. I am currently an employee of Nexus Global. I am on the clock. I cannot discuss Virex business during company time. It's a conflict of interest. Conflict of interest. Alice, we are going to lose the client. Just tell me the code. I don't work for you anymore, Mark. You made it very clear that my services were no longer needed, and that Ruby was more than capable of handling my duties. Surely the senior analyst you're paying 3 times my old salary can figure out a simple customs entry. Silence. Heavy, painful silence. She doesn't know, Mark whispered, defeated. She doesn't know any of it. Alice, please. I'm asking as a friend. We are not friends, Mark. We were colleagues. And you fired me, constructively. Paused for effect. However, I am a professional. If you require my expertise, I can offer my services as an external consultant. Fine. Whatever. Mark barked. Just tell me what to do. Not so fast. My consulting rate is $500 per hour, with a minimum retainer of 10 hours paid up front, plus a rush fee of $2,000. I'll send you the contract via DocuSign. Once the funds hit my account, I'll get on a call with Officer Miller. That's extortion, Mark screamed. $7,000 for a phone call. That's the price of experience, Mark, I said coldly. The same experience you thought was worthless last week. You have 15 minutes before the customs office closes for lunch. The clock is ticking. Hung up. 10 minutes later, the notification chimed on my phone. Funds received. $7,000. Smirk. I called Officer Miller. Hey Jim, it's Alice. Yes, I moved. No long story. Listen, those idiots at my old place messed up the paperwork. Can you release the Detroit truck? Yeah, use the old blanket waiver on file. Thanks, Jim. Say hi to the wife for me. The call took exactly 3 minutes. I texted Mark. Problem solved. Cargo released. Pleasure doing business with you. The fallout over the next month was spectacular to watch. That $7,000 was just a bandage on a bullet wound. Without me navigating the complex web of suppliers, Virex's efficiency plummeted. Shipments were late. Costs skyrocketed. The Detroit client, furious about the near miss, didn't renew their contract. Guess who they signed with? Nexus Global. 3 months later, I walked into a meeting room at Nexus to meet our new client. It was the operations VP of the automotive company. Alice, he said, shaking my hand warmly. I heard you moved here. Thank God. When you left Virex, the whole place fell apart like a house of cards. We need someone who knows what they're doing. I'm glad to be here, I smiled. That night, I took my daughter out to the most expensive Italian restaurant in the city. We ordered everything we wanted. No calculating the bill in my head. No worrying about rent. Mom, you look different, my daughter said, twirling her pasta. You look happy. I am, sweetie, I said, raising my glass of wine. Mark and Ruby thought I was just a cog in the machine. They forgot that even the biggest machine stops dead if you remove the smallest, most critical gear. I wasn't just a survivor anymore. I was the winner. And the best part, I didn't have to shout, fight, or get my hands dirty. I just walked away and let their own incompetence destroy them. The system works eventually, but sometimes you have to break it first to make it work for you. End. In this episode of Heirloom Scars, we witness that silence is not submission, that experience is something money cannot buy, and that the person holding the keys to the system is the only one who decides when to lock the door. You heard how Alice Eve stood tall against corporate hubris and collected her worth, with interest. If you savored the taste of victory when that final invoice was paid, don't forget to like this video to join our pursuit of justice, and subscribe to become part of the Heirloom Scars family. Every like is a step toward bringing another untold story into the light. But what about your scars? Do you have a battle fought in a quiet office corner, behind closed doors, or in the thick of life? A story waiting to be told? If you want us to be your voice in the next episode, send your story to the email address below. The names may change, the places may change, but the struggle remains the same. Remember, sometimes the greatest revolution begins simply by demanding what you are owed. Until the next showdown, stay kind, stay just.